Okay, we finally have everything ready. The days came, we're going to weld this thing together. We've got our areas metal finished nice where we put our patches. All of our blend and everything here is real nice metal finish. Got the post metal finish nice. Across the top metal finish nice here. This post, this corner, everything looks good. So we've got it up here. We've got our cut line scribed. So now we're going to tack weld it first in the back. We'll get the back set. Pull this back and get a couple tacks down here, and then we'll open the door and put a couple of tacks on the A-pillar to the A-post and pretty much get it all tacked in place real tight. Check everything, be sure it's in tolerance, and then we'll finish weld here in the front. And then after that, we're going to get the rear window tacked in place. Okay, so we're ready to put the rear roof back together. I can see by the light I've got some dents and stuff here that need some attention first. So while we got this piece off, we'll run it through the planishing hammer, get all the dents out of it, smooth it up, metal finish it a little bit, and that'll save us a lot of work having to do it on the car. So you saw we got our window, how it lined up really nice, you know, from the last video, how we got these corners to line up before we cut everything. And everything just went right together. It's all welded back together. It all lines up good. That's going to dress out really nice and clean up nice. And now we're ready to start talking about these corners. So what I did was I took my 10 snips and I cleaned up my edge from where we'd cut it with the cutoff wheel, you know. So that took care of that. The other thing we did was I had Eddie weld a strip on. Okay, this is the corner that came off, right? We added a 1/2-inch strip right up the side of both sides. We added a little extra at the top too. It was real thin here where the factory lead was from the factory joint. So these pieces are ready to go in. So on the other side here, I've got one kind of slipped inside. This edge here, if we lined it up, you know, to weld it back in, then it would be overlapping right here, you know, it'd go right back. If we're leaning it forward, it's tucked up underneath, so we didn't have to add any extra material. And now, since this piece was the stock length, you can kind of see here, since this was the stock length, this is hanging way down inside the car. So with that piece added on, we'll be able to scribe here, around here, And then this is just extra length, so we'll be able to scribe it here. Now, another thing, since we are leaning this forward, if you notice, we've got a gap right here between where it's going to weld and where it's not. So I'm going to shrink this right here with mechanically with some hand shrinkers. That's going to pull that over just a little bit and tighten that up, and then we'll be able to, because we don't want it to, we want it to flow. We don't want it to come up and then, you know, have a bump in it. So it's easier to shrink it before we put the panel in. So everything looks pretty good. I mean, roof's leaning forward. You can see we can push this forward. We can push it forward like that right there. Everything's looking good. Then we'll put them up in there and get them fit and scribed. The way I'm going to shrink this flange that's sticking up a little bit is with mechanical. These are old Lancasters that I've had for about 30 years. And I just put a bar on it so I could have a handle, and we'll just go up there and just give it a few squeezes, and that'll tighten it right up. So if you're leaning the back of the roof, this is really the only way to do it, you know, because you need to tilt this corner forward, and so that's what we're doing. All right, so we've got this corner in place here. You can see about here, it's about from here to the front. It's leaned forward about 5/8, 3/4 of an inch at the top. So we got this nice lean forward going. So I'm ready to scribe it, but I'm going to do it in two sections or two steps. I'm going to scribe this outside and stop here, and then get it cut, and then we're going to put it back in and clamp it in place, because if I scribe this whole thing, when it moves out this 1/16 of an inch to this surface is flush with this surface, then we'll have a gap here, see? So remember that whenever you're putting in a patch panel or something like that, that sometimes if it's an overlay and you cut it, if you cut the whole thing out all at once, it's going to be short on one side because of the material thickness that you're talking about here, see? If you look here, you can see where I hand shrunk this with the shrinkers, and look how tight this pulled this up. Because all this is leaning forward, and originally when this was stamped, this was standing more vertical, just slightly vertical, see? So taking the shrinker, I was able to shrink it, and it pulls it forward. Makes it real nice. Flows over real well. So that was the purpose of that hand shrinking. So now I'm just going to scribe this. I'm going to put me a couple of witness marks. Then we'll trim it. We'll clamp it back in there, and then I'll get my last scribe here, and then we'll be ready to tack weld this side in. got it all trimmed. We've got this pulled out here, clamped in. Clamp looks good, looks good, looks good. Looks good up top. It's touching right there. So now I can get this trim line. You love that sound. One, two, three. Now I'll pull this thing out, trim it. We're going to put it in, tack it in. Yes, baby. Okay, so we got our corner tack welded in. We'll get the other side tack welded in. Then we'll be able to pull our wood, door jamb and everything out. We'll hammer and dolly all of our tacks, get everything bitching. Do our final weld, metal finish all of this back here. And then last thing we'll do is then we'll put our roof insert in.